Okay. Well, welcome everyone on this class on nature and gifts. Most of these gatherings have been like a blend of, guided visualization and reflection, but this time kind of just wanted to be like not an information dump, but just like everything I know at this moment about gifts. So it's going to be more like knowledge sharing. And then we'll go until, oh yeah, look at us, Emma. Um, we'll go until probably like 35 or 40 after the hour, and then I'll stop the recording, and anyone who's here and can stay is welcome to discuss the material. So yeah, I hope it's a really rich time and sparks some new ideas and perspectives for each of you, wherever you are on the journey with gifts. Um, if you have a Living the Seasons journal, this is from week 4. That's kind of where I'm pulling from. Totally okay if you don't have one. But just so you know, that's sort of what today is based on. And that is the area where you might find some opportunities to deepen your understanding of these topics. The whole journal is on gifts, so wherever you are in the process, it will be on topic. Um, so this is really sacred work, talking about what our gifts are and why we're here and how to give of our gifts. So I want to treat it as such, and I've got a candle lit already, and I just want to make a little space for an opening invocation and grounding so that we can come at this material with open hearts and just call in all of the support that's available to us. So if you'd like to close your eyes or just rest your gaze softly in front of you, you can do that. And I invite you to just bring some awareness to your heart right now. This incredible organ that pumps blood for you, that oxygenates your blood, that shows you what to go closer toward and maybe what to distance yourself from. This incredible system of guidance and care that just lives in your chest. It's there without you making it or paying for it or applying for it. It's just, it's there. It's part of you. And so we welcome the heart's wisdom to today's gathering. I also want to welcome in all of our wise and well ancestors, the ancestors who lived before capitalism and through capitalism and who have lived since the advent of capitalism, who knew how to give of their gifts and what their gifts were, and knew how to cultivate their gifts. Please come and be with us today in this gathering, but also as we leave, please continue to guide us about what our gifts are and how they want to be given to the village. I welcome in the spirits of the lands that each of us are on and this sacred planet and this patch of the planet that we're inhabiting right now. I welcome in the life forces of earth and fire and water and mineral and nature, especially nature, that element that can teach us how to grow like the plants and the animals and the fungi. Please come and be with us today. We are your students. May this time together be a blessing to each of us here and all those listening to the recording. And in some mysterious way, may this time together be a blessing to each of our communities that we're a part of and to the lands that we live on. And so it is. Alrighty. Welcome, Natalia and Jess and Lisa and Andrea. Okay, so I want to start by talking about what gifts are and what they aren't. And what makes the most sense for me and what I've been sort of workshopping in my own life for the last maybe almost year, is how our gifts are related to the 5 elements. And I learned about the 5 elements specifically through a teacher who had worked with Malidoma Patrice Somé, who was an elder from Burkina Faso in Africa, and wrote a lot of books that you might know. And also, this comes from the millennia long practice of Taoism. And I'm not an expert in either of these cosmologies, but what learning about the 5 elements just made instant sense to me because I think it's just how the ecosystem, it's how the land is. So I'm not going to go into those a lot today, but I'm going to talk about what I believe gifts are and how they are actually related to the ecosystems that we inhabit. So, in the five elements that I've studied, one of the elements is nature, which is all that grows and has upward movement. So, plants, the trees, the fungi, the animals, and us. And we all have all five elements, and every landscape has all five elements. And the nature element shows us how to grow. How do we make plans? What am I growing into? How do I fruit and blossom when it's the right time? And a big part of that is our gifts. So our gifts are literally our nature. It's what is growing and needs to grow and bloom and fruit inside of us. And I'm not saying this just metaphorically. I think this is like literally a phenomenon. If I'm not living out my gifts and if I'm not able or supported to be my true nature just as I am, I feel myself withering and dying or being stilted. And I think this is something that is happening to many, many people across our globe, not just ecosystems, although it's happening there as well. So you have a nature. You are nature. You're no different, and you are made up of the exact same elements and properties that you see in the land outside. So, if that's true, you have this nature part of you that is your gifts that needs to grow. It is just part of being human to need to grow and fruit and blossom and say, this is who I am and this is what I have to give to the rest of the ecosystem. All beings, including humans, who are here are fulfilling a specific important ecological niche. So even if you feel like your gifts are just like someone else's or you don't know what they are, every dandelion that I see in my yard right now is there and welcomed by the land. They're doing something important. I may think they're a weed and feel guilty about, my yard, but actually they wouldn't be there if the land didn't need that specific kind of plant and the medicine that they bring. So as we talk about gifts, I just want to encourage you to remember that even if you don't know what yours are, you don't know how to name them or how to live them, they're already here and they're already needed in the ecosystem that you live in. They just are. Um, so in the five elements that I've learned in learning about the five elements, some of the key characteristics of the nature element are again that upward movement. You can think of a tree or a plant growing upward toward the sun, toward what nourishes it. There's this aspect of being able to make plans and like sort of assert not our will, but our intention that I'm going to stretch in this way. Um, it's this need to be growing, again, not all of the time. Across from the nature element, we also have the mineral element, which is that downward decay and death and descent that is also needed. But there are absolutely times, and spring is the season of the nature element when we do need to grow, and the planet, the ecosystem needs to grow in a big way. And that's this time, depending if you're in the northern hemisphere. So you have nature inside of you. You are nature. And you have gifts that need to grow, just like the land has things that need to grow. I don't believe that we chose these gifts. I think we were born with them. They are innate to who we are. Every being, every person has a unique quality and essence to them. The way that you show up and the presence that you bring to a place is unique to the presence I might bring to a place. And we can't always like name it or define it, but you know what it's like to be around different people. Everyone has a specific kind of energetic quality to them. And some of that is the gifts that they bring. So you were born with these gifts. They are innate to you. You cannot change them. Your choice is whether you'd like to cultivate them in this lifetime or not. And that's not always just an open-ended choice. There's, of course, lots of um, complications depending on someone's circumstances and privilege, and do I have the space and support to get to know my gifts and live into them or not. And so we're all sort of navigating that with um, different obstacles and opportunities. But every human being, every being on this planet has gifts that need to grow and be given away to the village or to the ecosystem. Um, so I think of gifts as the qualities of you that transcend the time you were born in, culture, family, and your skills. Your gifts are kind of the things that would be with you and your soul no matter when you incarnated, but they are shaped by your circumstances and your family of origin. Again, if someone is born with a gift of like song, if someone has a beautiful voice and that's part of their gifts, if they were born, 1,000 years ago, the way that that gift would manifest might be different. Maybe there was a pathway to actually become a bard or a singer, in culture, and that was celebrated versus if they have that gift now and they were born to parents who didn't believe in art and didn't believe singing was valuable at all, the way that gift could be expressed now might be different, but the gift is the same. The gift is innate to us, but it gets shaped by our environment and family and culture. Gifts are always a lot easier to see in other people than in ourselves. I don't know why that is exactly, but that's just been my experience. So I want to give a couple of examples just to help anchor this a little bit. And there's someone I really like called Michael Meade, who you probably all know about. He has a podcast called Living Myth, and he wrote a book called The Genius Myth. And he talks about our gifts as like your innate genius, the sort of, again, that like quality and essence of your soul that needs to be lived out in some way in this lifetime. So I really like all of his work. And if you haven't checked out Living Myth, I recommend it. But I want to give you a couple of examples of where I see gifts in people that you might know. I know some of you are in this class I teach called Composting Capitalism, or have been in it. And so we're going through this book called Caliban and the Witch by Silvia Federici. So Sylvia Federici is very gifted. I would say some of her gifts seem to be recognizing patterns. She was able to notice that what happened in the emergence of capitalism was still happening in Nigeria in the 80s. So she noticed patterns. She's a wonderful storyteller, and she's helping us see the origins of capitalism in a different light. She's telling us a different kind of story. She's like a storehouse of knowledge and is just able to keep track of a lot. So those are gifts that probably would have stayed with her no matter what, but she was born in Italy at a specific time when girls and women could become academics. And so she was able to grow into this role now where she has the skills of writing and teaching, and she wrote this book. But her gifts of pattern recognition and storytelling and knowledge could have been channeled into lots of different avenues. Um, Also, just to like not keep it only in the human realm, I just yesterday came across this story about this large African pouched rat named Ronan, who is part of a team of rats in Cambodia who are searching for, like, are finding landmines and helping disable them. So this sweet, actually quite large rat, Ronan, has he's like setting records for how many landmines he's detected compared to other rats. So he has these gifts of scent and the ability to track and communicate to the humans that he's working with. If he hadn't been, you know, taken to Cambodia, he could have used those gifts probably in catching prey and eating well and those things. But it sounds like he really has some special gifts of, scent and tracking and communication. Um, One other example I want to give is Frida Kahlo, the amazing Mexican artist. Um, so Frida ha was very gifted in symbolism. If you've studied her paintings at all, she has a lot of incredible symbolism and story, self-expression, working with color and texture. And she was born into a family who celebrated that and enabled her to express her art. But her gift was shaped by, having polio as a young child and then a really bad accident where her pelvis was broken and she was bedridden. So the gifts were always there, but our life circumstances sort of dictate how they might flow and be expressed, just like in Frida's case. So everyone is gifted, including you. You are absolutely gifted. It's easier for other people to see than you, most likely. And gifts have a mind of their own. Again, it's like it's nature. Like I might prune my grape leaves, but the grape plant is going to do what it needs and wants to do, and the gifts are the same. So again, we have a choice of whether we want to cultivate them or if we want to, try to ignore them or stay in this pattern of saying they're not valuable or what could I do with them. It's our choice whether we want to embrace them as they are and welcome them and cultivate them. Um, and also, I think working with our gifts is a place where healing is possible with the land as well. Because again, remember on an elemental level, your gifts, what you want to, your true nature, what you want to do, what you want to give away is the same as what is growing outside of you. So when we heal our own relationship to our gifts, it's kind of like we're doing ecological restoration. And that might sound weird, but I just think it's true. And you can see what you think. So let's talk about how to get to know your gifts. The two easiest entry ways in that I have found are to look at where there's pain and where there's pleasure. So we'll start with pain. There is some kind of mystical truth that says that where we have a wound is also the place where our gifts are. That there's just this like archetypal phenomenon where like what the pain I have that I'm healing is also a deep well of giftedness and service to others. Um, I see this in nature through what are called sting and relief relationships, where oftentimes a plant that is poisonous will be growing right next to a plant that has its antidote. So last fall, my daughter got a really bad run with stinging nettle, which are it's this plant out here that really, really hurts. And she got stinging nettle all over her leg. But sure enough, right next to the nettle was dock leaf, which I put in my mouth and chewed up and rubbed all over her leg. And she was fine within a couple minutes. The poison ivy will often grow next to what's called jewel weed, which is an ointment you can use to quell a rash of poison ivy. So there's just this relationship between pain and medicine. And everyone has pain and trauma. I think that's just a part of being a person. And again, we're invited as adults to, in whatever ways feel accessible to us, to enter into that pain or that wounding and make medicine from it. And if you know anything about Greek myths, you might have heard of the myth of Chiron, who was a centaur and called the wounded healer. And Chiron was born in kind of a tumultuous relationship, and then was abandoned at birth because he was half horse and half human, and his mother, Rhea, didn't like that. And so she abandoned him, and then he was adopted by two other gods and ended up becoming this really incredible healer who could work with all of these heroes and, you know, heal their ailments in ways that other people couldn't. But one day, Chiron got shot by these arrows that had been poisoned, and he had this gaping wound that he could not heal himself and was in pain constantly, but he was immortal. So it was like a never-ending painful existence. So he chose to become a constellation and give up his immortality and gift it to Prometheus, who was another god who had been sort of tortured endlessly, and so that Prometheus could be healed and set free. So the myth of Chiron shows us this phenomenon, which I think is true for most of us, that we have these wounds, but if we can nurture them enough or give from them in a sturdy way, we can make really impactful, important medicine and become good healers without having to pretend like we don't have wounds, but not acting out of the wound. I think there's like really amazing work being done, and I'm so grateful for it around trauma and pain and people getting to know what that is like and how it lives in their bodies. And if we only ever stay in the story of the trauma and the pain, we're missing out on getting to make the medicine from it. Like what is like, okay, that happened, and we need a lot of space to grieve that and support, and that's so valid. And is it possible that that could be part of the medicine that life is inviting you to bring forward? What happens then? So it's kind of like a we're missing part of the story sometimes. Um, so one way that you could learn about your own gifts in this is just to consider like, core wounds that keep coming up or patterns that are repeating. Is there healing that could be done there that then leads you into making medicine for others or gives you empathy that is medicinal for others? On a literal level, you could also look at where the asteroid or small planet Chiron is in your natal chart. This is a astrological placement where that can show us where we have some core wounding, but also really important gifts that need to be shared. So one super easy website is just channynicholas.com. Channy Nicholas is a really famous astrologer, and I like her work a lot. So you could look up where your Chiron was, depending on when you were born. You could also just look up where Chiron was in the sky in the month and year of your birth, and that will tell you, if Chiron was in Aries or Taurus or whatever, and you can do some research about what that might mean. Um, this has been really helpful to me, just learning about my own Chiron placement and like anything, astrology, tarot, any intuitive practice, it's like a mirror where we just get to decide, like, does that resonate? Does that feel true? And for me, learning about my Chiron and Gemini has really helped me see how, on one hand, I'm very good at there's a gift in being able to support people, like hearing their own truths and really trusting that. But that's something I have a really hard time doing myself. But when I do it, if I can heal that wound, I think my gifts are a lot better served and I can be of better service to the community and the village. So you could look up where your Chiron is and go that way. So we talked about pain points as being one way you can get to know your gifts. And now I want to talk about pleasure points. Um, Learning about our gifts can be just very, very simple. It's essentially also not just the pain, but it's also just what you want to do. And as children, we're sort of taught out of this, like, oh, if we want to do something or don't want to do something, it's just, we're sort of maybe gently or not so gently just coerced into complying with whatever we have to do. And we're all very good at just doing what we have to do. That's like a lifelong project most of us have probably been in. But what you want to do is a totally valid way to get to know your gifts, because what you want to do is probably natural and simple, and I bet it has a positive impact in some way on the land around you and the people around you. Um, you know, one of my gifts is like communicating with the land. And I know that's a gift because I have to do it. If I don't do it, I literally am like withering and dying. It's like, it's just, I have to have it. And everyone needs to be with the land, but that's a place where I know that what I want to do is valid. And when I do that, I come back with a lot sturdier, I think better insights that I can share with other people through the work that I do. So if you find yourself like just needing to gather with people, that's probably one of your gifts. If you find yourself just really enjoying spending time in really deep conversations with people one-on-one or on certain topics, that could be one of your gifts. If you just have to if you have to swim in open water, maybe that's one of your gifts. So just letting ourselves kind of be our natural, in our naturalness, and trusting that that is also a way to learn our gifts and to give of them, and that it's not all pain and what's hard and are you going to be of service and just give of yourself completely. It can also just be like, I love doing this, and in that loving it and joyfulness is where the gifts are. Because remember, if gifts are nature, then they're regenerative. So we know we're in a gift when it feels good. It doesn't mean there's not effort, but it feels good and it doesn't deplete us on a soulful level. Again, you might have to like stop so that you can go to sleep, but we all know that difference between work that is just a net drain and work that is regenerative, where like I did this thing, I gave of a gift and it landed for someone and there's resonance and like I got something really wonderful back from that. This can be a regenerative cycle just like that. Um, so if you did nothing else after today but just started doing more of what you want to do, I would say A plus. You're getting to know and living into your gifts. I really, really trust that. Um, but there is this other phenomenon of like we get to know our gifts when we give them away. Gifts aren't meant to be hoarded. It's like if you had a plant, your nature is trying to grow, but you never gave it sunshine because you never wanted anyone to see it, or you like pruned it, until there's just a stub constantly. The gift is going to grow. It wants to grow, and it grows by giving it away, by trying and saying, like, and it doesn't have to be just with humans, it can be with the more than human realm as well, or just to yourself. But giving those gifts away, using them, exercising them, letting them grow is an essential part of getting to know them. It's like a feedback loop that can really feed us for a long time if we give of our gifts and we allow them to fruit and bloom. That's a whole, pantry full of fruit and veggies that you have for the next autumn and winter. Um, One other thing I want to say here, in case it's helpful, is something around envy. So, like I said, it's hard to see our own gifts, but it's often very easy to see them in others. But what you see in others that you might envy or really admire or think like, oh, I wish I could do that, um, you're going to see different things, and you can only see what you already have. I don't know if this is related to mirror neurons or like how exactly this works, but if we all looked at, Frida Kahlo or someone famous, we would all see different things. Like maybe you really admire how she would dress and the way she used clothing to express herself. Or maybe you would really admire how she navigated her relationship to Diego Rivera. Like the things you're going to see in someone are different than what I would see because we can only see the nature that we already have. So envy can be a useful tool in learning about what we have and where our own gifts want to grow. If you ever feel like, oh, I wish I could do that, look at your own, where can you give that gift to yourself and give it space to grow. Um, some ways that you can nurture your gifts. Again, you don't have to like name them or have a list or know exactly what they are to do this. But a big part of it is just accepting the fact that you have them, just like welcoming them as they are. Sometimes we feel like, oh, these aren't the gifts I wanted, or like these aren't the cool ones, or no one makes money from these gifts. But that's like if you had a little sapling, this sweet little vulnerable plant that's trying to grow, and then you just like dumped a bunch of stuff on them, it's hurtful. It's not going to help them grow. So a big part of this is just seeing the nature that is here, seeing the nature of you and welcoming it as much as you can, and letting your own like loving attention be like sunlight for that nature that wants to grow, and asking and getting curious about them and letting your gifts show you who they are and what they are and how they want to grow. And again, it's just about it can be as simple as you just doing what feels natural and like what you want to do, what's naturally flowing from you. But it is true. I know that we live in capitalism. I understand that capitalism doesn't give a shit about what our gifts are, doesn't appreciate most of them, actively diminishes and represses many of them. So I understand all of that, and that you're probably someone who still has to earn in money and pay bills. So the way I have navigated it in my own life is that, there are some gifts that don't need to have anything to do with income. They're just for you to enjoy. It's just part of you being a natural being. And maybe you give them away in your own time or in your artistic practice or with your family. They don't have to have anything to do with income or money. There are other gifts that may want to be an avenue by which you are of service and earn an income. And that can get tricky because I know it complicates things when we're trying to give in a reciprocal way that is our nature and our heart, and then we're asking, people to pay for it, or, it gets complicated. But we can all find little pockets and windows where we can live as in alignment with our gifts as possible and still support ourselves in a material way. So that might be sort of obvious, like this is my gift and I build a business around the gifts and I'm able to live in them quite frequently or in a larger way. It could also just be, I have to be in this job right now, but is there a way to do this next meeting or presentation in a way that is as natural and authentic to me as possible? Like, maybe one of your gifts is um, understanding like who's like the emotional temperature of a room. Could you bring that into your next meeting and maybe ask some deeper questions or say, I'm noticing you seem, to be feeling this way. Is that true? Or maybe you have a gift of like, being able to see the gifts of others. And so, is there a way that you could bring that into your relationships at work or in the ways that you're supporting people? So, there's always an opportunity, and you're already doing it because your gifts just are you. You are your gifts, so you don't have to overthink it. But there's often opportunities where we can make more room for them, no matter what the work is that we're doing. Um, Ideally, we all would have grown up in a culture where there were adults and elders who, from an early age, would have said, "Oh, you are gifted. Here are the gifts that we see. Here are the gifts that you carry. We welcome those gifts. We need those gifts. And we give you, the apprenticeships or the space and the guidance to grow those gifts." Most of us did not get that. So here we are, midlife or around then, wondering like, how do we welcome our own gifts and live into them? And so I think all we can do is accept that they're here and nurture them as best we can, given the opportunities and obstacles that we have. And remember that they want to grow. And it's our choice whether we will cultivate them or not, but no one in this culture is really going to give you permission or encouragement to do that. Most people will tell you, to just stick with what you're good at, if you have a skill or a talent or the career that you've always been in. So it's up to each of us as our adult selves to say, I'm going to choose to live into my nature as best I can and give of these gifts. Um, what else did I want to say about this today? There was something about the pain. Maybe it'll come back to me later. Um, so yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say before we stop the recording, and then anyone here live who would like to stay and discuss is totally welcome. I'd love to have you. Um, is that when you nurture your gifts or just allow yourself to be as you are, as natural as possible, what you're doing is just you're adding life to life. So again, this is like elemental and very simple. That the way that if you can nurture your own giftedness, study where you have wounding. Oh, that's what I wanted to say. Okay, so part of this around like getting to know your gifts in the pain stories or wounding that we have is understanding what are the pain points that actually lead to the giftedness, and what are the pain points that are kind of more just about like human survival and learning how to survive and cope. And that's something that each of us has to learn how to discern. Um, I have gifts, quote unquote, like things that I was praised for as a child and got really good at doing that were actually just about not upsetting my mom or getting her, not wanting her to leave. So, I may be able to like read a room and really empathize, but in sitting with it for long enough, I realized those aren't really gifts because they're not regenerative to me. I'm exhausted tracking how everyone feels and adjusting myself to doing that. It's not regenerative. What's regenerative to me is telling the truth about what I see and like staying true to that, what I feel like I'm getting and what I know to be true. So I hope that makes sense. There's just like a little bit of discernment or a lot of discernment in that around this piece of like what's conditioning and what is actually just pain around the gift that might be, I don't know, whatever you believe, whether it's like a karmic wound or a soul agreement that you made coming into this lifetime that you would carry this wound and make medicine from it. But that's different than like conditioning that we had to go through through trauma or whatever. Not that they're always totally separate, but I encourage you to just be mindful of that. Um, so yeah, bottom line, I hope you'll find the places where you feel like you can be your natural self and trust the things that you want to do as really valid and keep those at the center. And then the money and the income and the skills and talents that you need can be built around that. But the gift and what they are and how to give of it and be your natural self can stay at sort of the core guiding point in your life. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. Um, I'm excited to hear from you in a minute, but I'll just close this sort of officially like we opened, and then I'll end the recording, and we can chat. So I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is here live today and everyone listening to the recording. Thank you to our wise and well ancestors who hold us and guide us, whether we know that they're there or work with them or not. Thank you for giving us our gifts and helping us live into them. Thank you to the lands that we live on and the earth element and water and fire and mineral. And thank you to nature and all of nature's beings who are teaching us so much about how to live into our naturalness and our giftedness. Merry meet and merry part and merry meet again. All right, I'll stop the recording and then we can chat.